The conflict in Ukraine is a tragedy. It is also a stark reminder. We live in a world where nuclear weapons exist. The very presence of these weapons casts a shadow over every international dispute, especially when tensions escalate between nuclear-armed states. There is a dangerous game being played, nuclear brinkmanship. This is the deliberate escalation of tensions, pushing the world closer to the precipice of nuclear war. The stakes are incredibly high. Western nations are supplying Ukraine with ever more sophisticated weaponry. The goal seems clear, a decisive defeat of Russia. This aspiration, however understandable, is dangerously naive. It ignores a fundamental reality. Russia possesses a vast and potent nuclear arsenal specifically designed to deter existential threats. As the conflict drags on and Western support for Ukraine intensifies, the risk of miscalculation grows. We must remember, Russia views its nuclear arsenal as a guarantor of its security and sovereignty. Any perception of an existential threat, real or imagined, could have catastrophic consequences. This is not a game of chess where one side simply concedes defeat. The possibility of nuclear escalation is a terrifying reality. We must proceed with extreme caution and a deep understanding of the potential ramifications of our actions. Russia inherited a massive nuclear arsenal from the Soviet Union. It remains a chilling reminder of the Cold War. It is not, however, a relic of a bygone era. This arsenal is constantly being modernized. It includes a diverse range of weapons, from intercontinental ballistic missiles to tactical nuclear weapons. The official stance of the Russian government is clear. These weapons are a deterrent. Their purpose is to prevent, not provoke, a nuclear conflict. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction persists. It is a chilling logic, but one that has, thus far, prevented a nuclear apocalypse. However, the very existence of these weapons poses an unacceptable risk. Accidents happen. Miscalculations are possible. The fog of war can lead to misinterpretations and catastrophic decisions. It is imperative that we acknowledge the reality of Russia's nuclear capabilities. We must not underestimate their resolve to use them if they perceive a direct threat to their existence. This is not about condoning or accepting the possession of nuclear weapons. It is about understanding the stakes and acting accordingly. The detonation of a nuclear weapon, even on a limited scale, would be an unimaginable tragedy. The immediate effects, blast, heat and radiation, would cause mass casualties and devastate infrastructure over vast areas. But the horror wouldn't end there. The long-term consequences of a nuclear exchange are even more terrifying. Radioactive fallout would spread across the globe, contaminating food and water supplies. The delicate balance of our planet's ecosystem would be disrupted, potentially triggering famines and ecological collapse. A nuclear winter, a prolonged period of darkness and cold caused by soot and dust, blocking out the sun, is a very real possibility. This could lead to widespread crop failures, mass starvation, and societal breakdown on a global scale. The humanitarian crisis would be unprecedented. Millions, perhaps billions, would perish. The survivors would face a bleak and uncertain future. The very fabric of civilization as we know it would be torn apart. The situation in Ukraine is incredibly volatile. The risks are immense. It is imperative that all parties involved exercise the utmost restraint. The pursuit of military victory, no matter how tempting, cannot come at the cost of risking a nuclear apocalypse. Diplomacy, however challenging, remains the only viable path forward. We must prioritize dialogue, de-escalation, and a negotiated settlement that addresses the legitimate security concerns of all parties involved. This is not a sign of weakness, but rather the ultimate act of responsibility. It requires courage, wisdom, and a willingness to compromise. The alternative, a descent into nuclear conflict, is simply unthinkable. The world is watching. The future of humanity hangs in the balance. We must choose dialogue over destruction, diplomacy over devastation. Section 5, the fragile web of diplomacy, a call for global cooperation. Diplomacy is not a spectator sport. It requires the active engagement of all responsible members of the international community. We must work together to create the conditions for meaningful dialogue and a peaceful resolution to the conflict in Ukraine. This is not the time for unilateral actions or inflammatory rhetoric. We need cool heads, clear thinking, and a shared commitment to averting disaster. The United Nations, as a forum for dialogue and cooperation, must play a central role in these efforts. International organizations, regional blocs, and individual nations must all work in concert to de-escalate tensions and find a path to peace. This is a global challenge that demands a global response. We must not allow the pursuit of narrow national interests to jeopardize the collective security of our planet. The time for cooperation is now. The stakes are simply too high to fail. Section 6. The human cost of hubris, remembering our shared humanity. It is easy to get caught up in the rhetoric of conflict, to demonize the other side, to forget that we are all human beings sharing this fragile planet. We must resist this temptation. We must remember our shared humanity. Behind the headlines, behind the political posturing, there are real people whose lives are being torn apart by this conflict. Families are being shattered, homes destroyed, lives lost. We must never lose sight of this fundamental truth. The pursuit of peace is not a sign of weakness, but a testament to our shared humanity. It is a recognition that war is never the answer, that violence begets only more violence, and that true security lies in cooperation, not conflict. Let us remember our common humanity, our shared hopes and dreams for a peaceful and prosperous future. Let us choose compassion over conflict, dialogue over destruction. Section 7. A time for wisdom, not war. The path forward. The path forward is clear, even if it is difficult. We must choose wisdom over war, diplomacy over destruction. This requires leadership, courage, and a willingness to look beyond the immediate crisis to the long-term consequences of our actions. We must invest in diplomacy, strengthen international institutions, and work tirelessly to build a world where conflict is resolved peacefully without resorting to the threat or use of force. This is not a utopian dream, but a practical necessity. The alternative, a world consumed by nuclear fire, is too horrible to contemplate. We have the power to choose a different path, a path of peace, cooperation, and shared prosperity. Let us choose wisely. The future of humanity depends on it. Let us not squander this opportunity. Section 8. On the precipice, a plea for peace. We stand on the precipice of a very dangerous moment in human history. The choices we make today will determine the fate of generations to come. Let us choose peace. Let us reject the siren song of war, the allure of violence, the temptation to demonize those who are different from us. Let us embrace our shared humanity, our common destiny, our responsibility to build a better future for all. The time for peace is now. Let our voices be heard. Let us demand a world free from the threat of nuclear annihilation, a world where dialogue triumphs over destruction, where hope outshines despair. The future is in our hands. Let us choose wisely. Let us choose peace.